Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you are planning on through hiking the John Muir Trail, then you already know that it is not necessarily cheap. But there are some hidden costs and common traps that could blow your budget before you even hit the trail. In today's video, I'm going to share exactly what I spent, some things that caught me off guard, and areas where I think you might be able to save some money where it matters most. So if you are looking to hike the John Muir Trail and want to avoid financial mistakes, then this video is for you. So let's get started. So in the summer of 2024, my teenage son and I spent 14 days on the John Muir Trail from July 1st through July 14th. This was the first real backpacking trip for my teenage son. So I wanted to make sure that the weight on his back was not what was always on his mind. The terrain of that trail is bad enough to kind of kick your butt. I didn't want, our equipment to be a constant thing for him. So we probably were a little bit further on the ultralight side, but definitely prioritized comfort in our gear on this trip. So that's just a little bit of background information, a little bit about how we approach things kind of high level and in our route and our timeline. Your route, your timeline, the time of the year, and some of those other things, what you prioritize may change your equipment purchases and things like that slightly. So a little bit of context to our trail. The first thing I want to show you is a survey from Halfway Anywhere, which does surveys of all kind of the major trails in the United States each year and kind of gives breakdowns of everything from gear to costs to you name it. So I will make sure to link that in the description below, but I'll point your attention here to the computer screen where you can see what the survey results were for the 2024 John Muir Trail hiking class. So here we see that the average hiker spent $1,978 on the entirety of the JMT. This includes gear spent before the start, and then obviously kind of things that happened along the way of the trail. So a good baseline for you to kind of begin your planning around is that $1,978 mark. But I just wanted to use this as a way to orient you and us to kind of the average spend that through hikers of the JMT do. So again, $1,980, let's say, a good average. So with that known now, what the average hiker spent, let's look at what yours truly, Colby, spent on the trail. So if we look here at the spreadsheet, back to the computer, the total that I spent was $2,435.06. You can see how that breaks down here in terms of areas, different categories that I put out. So equipment, groceries, lodging, food, and some miscellaneous categories. And you can see clearly that equipment was the highest. And there are some reasons for that, and I can get into that. But let's look at some of these categories a little bit more closely, and I can kind of explain where some of those funds went. So if we look first at the miscellaneous category, these are a few things that just didn't know exactly where to kind of put them in terms of categories. So we stayed the night before at the Backpackers Campground in Yosemite Valley. Our permits, obviously, for the John Muir Trail. I purchased search and rescue insurance through Garmin. You never know, it was 40 bucks, not that big of a deal, and worth it. I also had to purchase the InReach plan for my Garmin InReach Mini 2. I went with the highest plan at the time, which gave me unlimited, texting and weather reports. There was some UPS cost, USPS, shipping a package or a box to Tuolumne Meadows, as well as then our 5-gallon bucket to VVR. And then there was the cost of the 5-gallon bucket itself. So that kind of covers the miscellaneous spend. The other category that we'll go to, so food, as you look on here, is like on-trail food. So that was at Red's Meadow. That was at the Whitney Portal when we finished. I'm just trying to think. That was Red's, Whitney, Yeah, so food was kind of more like food on the trail things. The caveat there being, and with the next category here in lodging, I did not get a total breakdown of what my cost was at Vermilion Valley. So I put lodging because I did get a room that night. So that was a cost. Then there was obviously the cost of we had dinner and breakfast and lunch there. And then we bought a few little supplies and we did the Wi-Fi. So I don't know what all of that broke out to. I didn't get an itemized receipt, so I just throw that all under lodging. The groceries and kind of what I put for grocery was more the food that we purchased for our resupply to start off the trail on day 1, and then the resupply on our second day in Tuolumne Meadows, and then the VVR resupply of food all the way to the end of the trail. So food here, $431.31, sorry, groceries, was all of what we purchased prior to the trip, what I purchased prior to the trip for every day on trail. And then finally, the equipment here. Obviously the biggest category, $1,361. I'm a bit over the average, and one of the areas I think in particular where that comes is here on the screen. My Garmin InReach Mini 2. I bought that for this trip. I hadn't had that before. So if you've already got one of those, then likely, you know, and if I already had one of those, then I would have been a lot closer to the average than where I sit with 2430. The big thing, obviously another big expense, was the sleeping pad. I used a new one for this trip too. I really need the 25-inch pads, and so that was what this was. And then I chose to purchase a bear canister. Those can be rented. $94 isn't terrible for those bear vaults, but I chose to purchase that. Anyway, you can kind of see the equipment cost breakdown here, which I felt is probably pretty in line with what the Halfway Anywhere website was showing at around $900, minus my big expense on the Garmin InReach Mini, and probably fits pretty much in line with the averages from the rest of the JMT thru hikers in 2024. So things that caught me off guard on the trip. And I thought I did my research pretty well, so that might be a little bit of a strong term. I don't know that anything really caught me off guard on the trip, but I will say if you're going to stop in Reds Meadow for a meal or two, and which I still highly suggest going to VVR, just know, especially VVR, I don't want to say nickeled and dimed. That's kind of a really poor term and makes them possibly look bad. They don't nickel and dime you, but things just cost. And because of the logistics of getting things in and out of that area, it just costs money. And the fact that it's in California, it does cost money. So you will spend more at VVR than you think. They do an honor system essentially. So you don't buy right away. You go through the line, you tell them what you're getting. They kind of create a tab for you. And then at the end, you pay the bill. So because of that, maybe it doesn't feel like, because you're not transacting and buying with every single thing, you might kind of blow that up a little bit more than you thought. You might spend a little bit more there than you thought you would. I did a little bit more than I thought I would. And then again, you know, Reds Meadow, not a ton different. It's just a little bit more expensive there to get the supplies that they get brought into that area. And then just kind of being in California. So know that. What I will say though is, although some of the things were expensive, the meals that they cook and provide there at their grills, both at Reds Meadow and at VVR, the portions were huge. So the prices were kind of high, but they certainly aren't skipping out on the proportions and the size and everything that you get. So definitely was worth it, especially when you're kind of getting hungry from being on the trail for a while. But just know that both of those places are going to be a little bit more expensive than you thought. They both do take credit cards, so you don't need to worry about cash specifically, but again, a little bit more expensive, but portions, you know, very generous in terms of food. And so I would still recommend stopping at both when you're on the trail. So where I think you can save a little bit of money, obviously gear is going to be the biggest expense. So if you're really looking to do this on a budget, I would look at your current gear and just be okay with what you have. You may have an older backpack, you may have an older sleeping bag or a quilt, hopefully, if you've watched my other videos. Don't feel like you have to upgrade. I made a few things that I probably didn't have to upgrade for this trip. As I look back at this list for the first time since I probably bought all this stuff, to be honest. And there's a few things I look back and say, yeah, from a gear standpoint, I probably didn't need to do this. So that's one area. The other area where I think you can really save is just kind of being smart with what you're doing at your resupply stops, and not using or spending a little bit more money at a Red's Meadow, at Tuolumne Meadows if they've got their grill and their store open, or at a VVR. I know some folks were able to get in and out of those places very quickly and without any spend. We ended up staying about 24 hours at VVR just to give ourselves a little bit of rest that day. Others came in at night, spent the night, and then just had breakfast and left out the next morning. So if that's an option and your bodies are feeling fine, like that's another way where you could really save some money, is just going in, enjoying the evening there, a good dinner, wake up, have an amazing breakfast, grab a few things that you might need and just head out. So those are the areas, but honestly, it's a great trail. There's not a whole lot of places to really spend money. So it's a good place to be when you're on a budget because you're not spending money every day. But those are the areas, both kind of in terms of your gear choices and in terms of how much time you might spend in a resupply location, where you could save a little bit of money and not, spend as much as I did on the trail. All right, so to wrap up, and we'll look at this again, my total cost spent on this spreadsheet here, $2,435.06. I will say I did go through this and subtract out everything for my son, so cut in half most of the things and the things that were specific to me. So this is a pretty accurate cost for just me. With my son, there was a bit more here. But for a single person hiking the trail, this would give you a good idea, both the halfway anywhere, $1,900 and $1,980, as well as this kind of for me. So hopefully this is helpful. I know a lot of videos aren't really made around budgeting and kind of the financial burdens that come with some of us hiking and this kind of hobby of ours that is ever so fun and potentially expensive. So hopefully this is helpful for you aspiring JMT thru hikers. If you found this helpful at all, please do those YouTube things. Consider liking, subscribing, and below leave me a comment. What would be some financial tips that you have for people who are planning to hike the John Muir Trail? I know everybody would love to kind of get some little hacks where they can save money where it makes sense. And so comment below, let us know what makes sense or what were some things that you did on the trail. And if you're in your planning phase of the JMT and you're curious where you might camp while you're making your plan, let me point you towards my video here of the top 10 places to camp on the JMT from our experience in our trip. And with that, friends, I will see you all in the next one. Peace.